Hey there, and welcome into the Maybe I'm the Crazy One podcast, and I'm your host, Alex Chandler. Never being one to share a take with anyone that I know, I figure I'd start taking down my ideas and sharing them with you here. Every week, we'll explore new parts of the sports world, and I'll give you my viewpoints. Maybe I'm a genius, or maybe I'm just crazy. Tune in with me and find out for yourself. What's up, guys? Welcome in. This is episode 4 of Maybe I'm the Crazy One podcast. I'm your host, Alex Chandler. Excited to have you guys here today with us. We got a great slate of what we're going to talk about today. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, he asked coaches, players, scouts, NFL executives who their quarterback is in terms of their top 10, who their top 10 quarterbacks are. And it was eerily similar to what I said last week when I was discussing Baker Mayfield, which some people took offense to. And so I want to go ahead and set the record straight on my rankings, also compared to Jeremy Fowler's. We'll also discuss that in its own entirety as well. We're going to move on to some NBA topics after that. We're going to talk about participation trophies, particularly within Summer League, and why I think it's a terrible idea. We're also going to talk max contracts in the NBA, specifically for these veterans that keep getting these massive deals. And I just don't understand why any team would want to do that, but we'll break that down in the future very shortly. And then lastly, as we get ready for the NFL season, as I told you last week, we're going to go division by division. This week, we're going to end the show with the NFL South. I got some topics that we've talked about with the NFC South in terms of like Baker Mayfield and the Panthers. And so, as I alluded to last week, we are going to talk about the NFC South directly this week. We will get to that at the end of the show. We got to start here with some quarterbacks. So, like I said, Jeremy Fowler asked a bunch of NFL executives, NFL coaches, NFL scouts, and NFL players who their top 10 quarterbacks currently going into this season are. And let me just break down their list for you real quick. Number 1 was Aaron Rodgers. Number 2, Patrick Mahomes. 3, Josh Allen. 4, Tom Brady. 5, Joe Burrow. 6, Matthew Stafford. 7, Justin Herbert. 8, Russell Wilson. 9, Deshaun Watson. And 10, Dak Prescott. And so I'm going to give you my list here in just a minute. I need to preface it with this. I want everybody to understand I'm about to give you a list that seems contradictory to what I stated last week during the Baker Mayfield podcast. And I'm going to explain why it's not like hypocritical and contradictory to what I said last week. I just wanted to give that preface. So here's my list personally. I would go Mahomes, Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr. And I know when we were talking Baker last week, with a few people, there was something that rubbed you guys the wrong way that said, I put Baker and Russ in the same category when I said there was only 6 quarterbacks that I believed could win the Super Bowl. And I do believe in the 6 that I stated, which were Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, Brady, Stafford, and Burrow. And then there's a second tier of quarterbacks that are NFL-level quarterbacks that can't win a Super Bowl this year. And that's Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, but also includes people like Baker Mayfield, Mitch Trubisky, and Kirk Cousins. Now, I don't put them in the echelon of players that are terrible. They're not going to be those players that wouldn't even have a chance to make the playoffs, like a Zach Wilson, a Tua Tagovailoa. But they're going to be players that can have great seasons, can be on good teams, but there's something about their team that isn't enough. And that's why when a lot of people had problems with me putting Aaron Rodgers there, I was looking at it solely not necessarily from a quarterback perspective, but a winning perspective. And now, I don't agree with some of the things on the list. Obviously, I took Dak and Deshaun off. I put on Derek Carr and Lamar Jackson. And then for the most part, 8 out of the 10 were the same. When you get to this level of player, I think there's 2 different tiers. There's that top 6, and then everybody else slides in beneath them. And as you heard, I had Russell Wilson at number 5. So let's talk about that. The reason I don't believe Russell Wilson can't win a title this year, but is still a top 5 quarterback, is because of the team around him. And you're saying, man, he went to the Broncos, though. They have a great defense. Well, they had a great defense because they had a defensive head coach. Now they have a first-year head coach who's an offensive coordinator in Nathaniel Hackett, and we have no idea what he's going to do. Additionally, we have no idea how his system's going to look. Is he going to try to adopt the Matt LaFleur offense, which was adopted from the Kyle Shanahan offense? Or is he going to try to embark on his own adventure and say, this is how I would like to do things, so this is what I am going to do? Because if he does that, then we have zero, and I mean absolutely no idea what that's going to look like. And if he goes with the Matt LaFleur offense, we're going to have an idea of what that looks like, but we're not going to know what that looks like with their personnel. The Broncos don't have anybody as good as Devontae Adams was. Heck, the Broncos don't have anybody as good, in my opinion, as Aaron Jones. And those are 2 big parts of the makeup that have been a part of Matt LaFleur's offense the last 3 years in Green Bay. And that's part of the reason I have Aaron Rodgers in that top 4 or 5 discussion. And it's because of the fact that he's playing on a team that is absolutely built to win. While we say Russell Wilson's on this team that's built to win, I don't see it. For one, I don't trust the receiving corps. Cortland Sutton is great, but he's been injured. Jerry Jeudy can't seem to figure out where his hands went. He must have left them back in Tuscaloosa. Like, you got Tim Patrick. You had Noah Fant, but you traded him. You got an aging Melvin Gordon, and you have a Javonte Williams. So Russ is moving into a similar situation that he was already in Seattle, where he's going to have an average to above average defense, and he's going to have an average to slightly above average, potentially below average offense. And so what did that get him in the past? Well, it got him 9, 10-win seasons, 11-win seasons. It got him playoff berths. But it got him 2 trips to the Super Bowl and 1 win. But if we dive deeper into that, he was unsuccessful on his own after the Legion of Boom left, outside of winning regular season games. And then even with the Legion of Boom, he was only good when they were a top 5 defense. And that was the 2 years that they went to the Super Bowl. And so, unless the Broncos are going to end up being a top 3, top 2 defense this year, with offensive personnel being the ones that are now in the building, then maybe Russell can win a Super Bowl. But right now, he's not a part of my 6. But he's in my top 5, top 6 of total quarterbacks in terms of actual talent. I love Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson is an incredible talent, and when he was drafted, I said that guy's going to be the best quarterback in this draft. And that was in a draft with Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III, and Kirk Cousins, if we want to go there. I said that 10 years ago. And it's proven true to this day that he is still the best quarterback from that draft class. So, I don't want to hear that I have this hate for Russ or that I don't believe in Russ. It's actually that I don't believe in the Broncos and their ability to win a title. And it's because of the fact that I don't trust their personnel currently as a first-year team that we have no idea about. I don't trust the actual personnel on the field in terms of who's going to be touching this ball outside of Russell Wilson. And third thing, honestly, they play in the AFC West. Do we really think any of those teams are able to be beaten by average teams right now? We're calling it the best division potentially in NFL history. You want me to believe that the Chiefs, who have been the champions of that division, I think it's 6 years in a row now. The Raiders, who have gotten better year over year over year, and they continue to add talent, or the Chargers, who have one of the best quarterbacks, who was already also listed on this list. On Fowler's list, he was listed ahead of Russell Wilson. On my list, he's behind him. But with Justin Herbert and that talent, man, that division's insane. And I can't wait to break it down. It's going to be a few weeks before we do that, but guys, we got to cool it on the fact that I said that Russell Wilson isn't going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback, or he's not in that group of 6 that can win it. It's not about him. It's about the rest of his team. And if you look at the other guys in front of him, Mahomes has proven he can do it, and he did it last year with 3 teams that should have been playoff teams against the Chargers themselves and the Raiders. Aaron Rodgers, for all of his deficiencies in the playoffs, he at least gets you to the playoffs year in and year out and is the back-to-back MVP. I have to give that some respect. And so he gets to be in that group of 6 because if everything goes right, he's in a great spot. I got to put Josh Allen there because the last time I saw Josh Allen, he threw a touchdown to take the lead in the AFC Championship game, or AFC Divisional game, sorry. He threw a touchdown the last time we saw Josh Allen. Josh Allen played superbly in that playoff game and played superbly the last 2 years and arguably has been the best quarterback out of his draft class. And so, of course, I'm going to put him there, but also it goes to the rest of that division. And if we look at that division along with Aaron Rodgers' division, the top 10 quarterbacks aren't listed inside of those 2 divisions from either one of the lists, whether it's my own list or if it's Fowler's list. Then you got Tom Brady. There's nobody else listed from Brady's division. So, of course, I think he's by far and away the best quarterback in his division. So he has the best opportunity to win a title because he doesn't have any competition for 6 games, basically. It's him and another guy across from him for 6 games. And I understand that Baker's in that second tier, and we'll conversate about that in a minute. But second tier guys don't scare first tier guys. And then the last guy is Stafford. And again, I listed nobody else from the NFC West on that list. So the reason I think that those 6 guys, and Burrow being the 6th guy because I think he's transcendent, but Burrow is also the last guy on my list. I really think it's 5, but if you want me to give you 6, he's my 6th. There's 5 true guys that can win a Super Bowl, and the reason Burrow gets clumped in there is because he was just in one and had an opportunity to win had the offensive line held up. And so, I hear you guys. I understand Russell's an incredible talent, and the other guys on the list as well, whether it were the 4 guys that I didn't mention here in this top 6 outside of Russ, so I guess it's 3. So, was that Lamar, Justin, and Derek Carr on my side, Dak, and Deshaun on Jeremy Fowler's. They're all great quarterbacks, but they're in that second tier of guys. And that second tier is a massive tier in my opinion. It's the guys that should be NFL quarterbacks, should be starters in this league. They just aren't enough right now for their team to get it done. And that's okay. That's going to include your Bakers, your Kirks. It's going to include not Tua Tagovailoa, but it's going to include Teddy Bridgewater. I look at Teddy Bridgewater in a higher light than Tua right now. I guess you could put Mac Jones there because he made the playoffs. You could put Trevor Lawrence at the back end there because he showed a lot of great talent at the end of the year. I'm going to put Lamar in that category, at the top of that category, but he's an elite player that just can't win a ring. You can put Mitch Trubisky in the back because he knows how to win games. It's just really freaking ugly. Kyler Murray, I think he's just a little bit too small. You can exclude everybody from Seattle. Jalen Hurts, I don't think is a starting quarterback, so I think he would actually be in a tier below. Zach Wilson, tier below. I can do this the whole way, and if somebody wants to hear my full opinion on a 1 to 32 or 1 to 40 even, I'll be glad to give it, as long as nobody gives it to the U.S. Open Cup. So here's the thing. What this means is, from what I said on last week, I wasn't wrong according to the NFL. And I thought it was wildly crazy that they came out with the exact same 6 in a slightly different order. Also, I want to talk for a second. I think there's going to be a lot of hate for the fact that I put Derek Carr at 10. And I think he deserves a little bit more credit than we give him credit for because of where he plays. We all know that the Oakland Raiders as an organization are a terrible organization to play for because they don't value winning in the same way that other teams do. They look at speed and other factors higher than actual skill. There's a reason Jamarcus Russell was taken number 1 overall. There's a reason that players like Garyon Conley and Damon Arnett and similar players who weren't first-round picks have been recently drafted as first-round picks. And it seems like every pick that the Raiders make is just a bad, awful pick. Yet somehow, he's managed to have a pretty decent career minus the fact that he's had 3 10-loss seasons. And he still only has a 57-70 record. But he's had 3 4,000-yard seasons in a row. 4 of the last 5 seasons, he's thrown less than 10 interceptions, and the one season he didn't, he threw 10. And he's thrown over 20 touchdowns in every one of those seasons. Derek Carr is a better quarterback than a lot of people give him credit for, and it's because he's on the Raiders. Let's be honest. I don't think a lot of the problems that Derek Carr has shown are his problems. I think Derek Carr is very similar to Matt Stafford in a way, to where put him in a better situation to win and succeed, you're going to see prime-time results from the man. Now, Stafford still had his own problems himself, and I expect Derek Carr would have the same kind of similar problems, just because, again, I think they're pretty similar in terms of the style that they play as well as their ability. But that's okay, too, because at the end of the day, Matt Stafford's now a Super Bowl champion, and so I think Derek Carr would agree with that. If you put him in a better spot, he would be a Super Bowl champion too, and he would accept that in a heartbeat. So I think we are too hard on Derek Carr, and I think it's also super incredible. One thing that we've talked about here with the AFC West, all 4 of their quarterbacks, in my opinion, are top 10 quarterbacks. I don't know if that's ever happened in the league. That's something I'll research when we talk about the AFC West, but off the top of my head, I can't think of a stronger division right now in terms of quarterback play. But at the end of the day, only probably 3 of those teams will make the playoffs. All 4 could, but it's really unlikely based upon what records would have to be and how the rest of the conference would have to fall. But so only probably 3 of them will make the playoffs. Potentially only even 2 if they beat up on each other the way people expect them to. And so it'll be really interesting to see who we think those 2 teams will be or 3 teams will be. But there's no participation trophies there. Not at all. You don't get a participation trophy in the NFL for finishing 4th. You also don't get a participation trophy in the NFL for having the best record in preseason. Which I think is why it's absolutely ridiculous that the NBA is starting to introduce participation trophies essentially for the Summer League. In case you missed it, the NBA is now going to give out championship rings for the Summer League champions. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Now, let me preface this viewpoint by saying I understand that the players that play in the Summer League, a lot of them won't make the league. And so that gives them the opportunity to have something to hold on to that says, I'm still a champion of something. But we don't care about Summer League. We just talked about this. I literally talked about on the last podcast how Summer League will have some impact and have some value. However, at the end of the day, it's really not that important, and so we don't need to focus on it as hardly as we do. And so it's why it's not going to be a part of the focus for the show. Like I said, yeah, we'll look at Chet, we'll look at Paolo and how he's sitting now after 2 games, or Jabari, or the top picks, and see who's playing and performing well. We might talk about the semifinals or the finals of the summer league just because of the teams that are important and impactful in those games. But we're not talking about summer league for champions. I'm not going to care about who the 2022 Summer League champion is in 2028. If I were to go to a pawn shop and see a 2022 or 2023 or whatever year Summer League championship ring on sale, I would laugh at it. I'd say this has to be fake. Guys, I'm not a part of the group that believes that participation trophies are completely shit. I believe there is some value to it. But there's an age where that value runs out. And I think it's around 12 to 14 as you start to move into more high school athletics. I don't think you should get a participation trophy. Life doesn't have true participation trophies. I'm not going to be rewarded, for sitting at my desk, at a desk job. You can say, oh, you're getting a paycheck, Alex. Yeah. And I'm providing a service at that point. There's redeemable qualities, but if you want a championship, you should earn it. You can give out medals to kids. Sure. That's totally fine. But the team that wins should get a trophy. And half the time in participation trophy culture, that's not happening currently. And I don't want to make this about participation trophy culture. We got to move it back to the summer league here. But that's just my little diatribe on that. Everybody can deserve a medal as long as they're not in high school. At that point, you kind of got to understand you're not always going to be the winner. Somebody else is going to win. And so it's okay that you don't get a title or a trophy for the work and effort that you put in. Because guess what? At the end of the day, you're not always going to get that promotion, that bonus, that raise, whatever the heck you're looking for in your real job. And so you got to learn that somewhere. And if we continue to coddle those moments, then we're not going to get better as a society. And so why would we start to give these players, because some of those players will make the league, why would we give them a championship ring, make them think that they're something, and then they're not? Are we going to hold them accountable to championship level standards? No. So they didn't earn a championship ring. They beat a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds and dudes that won't make the league at 26, 27 years old. That's who they beat. They didn't even beat the LeBron James, the Giannis's, the Lukas, the Stephs, the KDs. They beat Raymond Delfinato, Matt Ryan, for example, for the Boston Celtics, which, by the way, great story for Matt Ryan. I hope he makes that team. But they're playing Matt Ryan, Max McClung. Those guys aren't going to be rotation guys in the NBA, superstars in the NBA. They're not going to sniff minutes in important games. And you want to give these guys rings? You want to give these guys participation trophies because they potentially win an insignificant tournament that just is there to help show the development of players and to allow teams to, fill out their G League rosters with adequate talent that may turn into a rotational guy in the future? I don't know, man. I don't really like that, personally. But I don't need to make those decisions either. But again, you can give him a medal, I guess. Not going to really mean anything. It will mean something, though. That's $63 million that Dame's going to make at the end of his contract from the extension he just signed. You guys realize Dame's going to be 37 when he's being paid $63 million at the end of this contract? 37. Now, I understand he's a superstar player, top 75 NBA all-time, all of that good stuff. Guys, no player's worth $63 million. Especially when your regular cap is at $120 million and your luxury tax currently is at $150 million, and your cap threshold in terms of being hard capped is like 157. So even if that were to increase, 10% year over year over year, 5 years into the future, the cap would then go up from 157 to 172, then 190, then 209, then 231, then 254. He's still a quarter of your cap at $63 million, and that's aggressively going up 10% per year, which doesn't happen. That's a lot of money to burn on one player, let alone a player that's going to be 37 and more than likely providing you diminishing returns. But this is just the first of many. I mean, we can look at Russell Westbrook's contract as an example of it currently at $47 million. We're going to be saying the same things about Dame come, 2027 currently? That's not fair to Dame. Dame's putting himself in a position to be ridiculed like that. Same with Brad Beal and his $250 million he just signed. Now, for Brad Beal, it does make a little bit more sense. Go ahead and get your money, young man. You're not one of the best players. You can't be the best player on a championship team. So get your money. But Dame could. Dame could be the best player on a championship team. If, one, he can stay healthy, and two, he would want to leave Portland. Because you're not going to get the best players to come join you in Portland. You're going to get a bunch of threes trying to be twos. And what I mean by that is third options being second options, not small forwards being guards. Like, unless they draft excellently, your ceiling is Western Conference Finals. And that's not fair to Dame. Guys, I love Dame too. Same with Russ. But when you put yourself in a situation not to be able to win, I'm going to call you out for that too. And I like Dame's reasoning for staying. Don't get me wrong. I believe in the loyalty thing where you stay with one team as long as you possibly can. You want to win it with the team that brought you in because in your eyes, they had the belief in you. I absolutely get that. But unless they're making this move for Kevin Durant or another superstar individual, maybe Donovan Mitchell, they're not. Their ceiling's going to be Western Conference Finals right now. And I think that's a good ceiling, I guess, but it's also, I don't expect them to make it there. I expect them to be first round fodder, honestly. And if the rest of Dame's career goes that way, where he's making the playoffs, but he's not getting out of the first round or even the second round, what's that ultimately going to do to his legacy? Because at that point you have, say the next 5 years, makes the playoffs 3 times, not even every year, just 3 times, but is a first round exit. He then has 10 first round exits in his career. In a 15-year career, Dame would have 10 first round exits and 1 trip to the Western Conference Finals when he was swept. Guys, I like Dame. And I like our superstars. And I want to see them play as long as they can. But at some point, we got to look at these max contracts. And if you're going to slide us into certain scales based upon, the cap, that's totally fine. But I think it needs to be reevaluated that older players, just like they reevaluated the length of term that you can have for older players a few years back, I think they should evaluate how older players are paid and what their max is. Because rookie maxes are different than veteran super maxes. So why can't we have, aging veterans, experienced veterans, if you want to be kind to the term, but you can have an experienced 10-plus year veteran. That max, it's front loaded. So that $63 million would have been this year. Now, granted, I know he already had an extension, so it would have been technically 3 years from now. But it's the first year of the contract where that $63 million hits, and then the second year would have been $57 versus the reverse. I think that's more important to look at than giving kids participation trophies, because that's something that's actually going to affect not only Dame, but it's going to affect the Trailblazers' ability to add talent around him, and they're going to be the ones that also have to pay that. Or they're going to be stuck trying to attach draft picks to a $63 million contract so another team would take it. I don't know. That just feels like we're going to be putting Dame in a bad situation at that point, and any other player that follows him with these Supermax contracts. I think there should be no reason we're giving a player $60 million 5 years in advance. No reason. Especially with guaranteed contracts, there should be no reason that's happening. But again, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just an old crotchety man that thinks, you shouldn't make that much money to play a professional game. I typically am not. I'm typically about the player getting their money in the best way that they possibly can. But in this case, is the juice worth the squeeze? In my opinion, it's not. But then again, I don't think any player in history at any point in time is worth that much money to be paid by one singular player, or by one singular team, I mean. No. No player. Not when you're in a hard cap sport. And you can tell me that the NBA is not a hard cap sport. They have hard capping rules. There is only so much money you can pay a player. There's only so much money that you can, have on your roster in terms of total contracts if you use certain exceptions or whatnot. So they do have a hard cap. But if we want to talk more about hard cap sports, that's totally fine. Let's go ahead and move down to our NFL tune-up with the NFC South. So as I did with the AFC South, we'll get to the predictions in terms of record here near the end of the segment, or at least in the middle of the segment. I'm going to kind of give you my breakdown of what I think is going to impact these records and really give you my thought process on what's going on. So first, since we talked about Carolina last week, let's go ahead and start there this week, kind of give you a little bit of a refresher. Baker was traded from the Browns to the Panthers for a conditional 5th-round pick. It can turn into a 4th-round pick if he plays 70% of the snaps for the season. It's very similar to the Carson Wentz deal last year, which was a second conditional pick that turned into a 1st-round pick. Except for this one, it's 5-4. So it's interesting that they came out today and said that Baker and Sam Darnold are going to be in an open competition. I'm sorry, what? Why would you trade for a player to have them be your backup when you already don't trust the quarterback you have? We've seen Sam Darnold with these Carolina Panthers before. I don't want to see that again. That's not a winning team. And I think that Baker will prove that he is better than Sam, even if it is an open competition. And we'll see Baker to start the season. As a matter of fact, I think Baker personally starts hot. I think it's really interesting that the Panthers start their season against the Browns. The Browns may not have Deshaun Watson, who they got rid of Baker for. So I think it's really interesting that Baker might immediately start his new career with the Panthers with a win against his former team. It's very interesting as well because the first game of last season was the Panthers versus the Jets, and the Panthers had just traded for Sam Darnold. So that then leads me to believe, and I know it's obviously coincidental that those two things occurred, but I don't think that this team is a very good team. I think they're very young, and so I think by the end of the season, we'll see some of that stuff start to fade and the Panthers themselves start to fade. And so I don't know if they'll be able to make the playoffs. However, if Baker can maintain his level of play and be a good to above average quarterback as he was 2 years ago before he was hurt last year, then I think they might have a chance to be, pretty frisky and be a playoff team. One team that I don't think is going to be a playoff team, though, is the Falcons. And that's really a bummer for Marcus Mariota, in my opinion. I like Marcus Mariota. I think he's shown a lot of class and character in the league. I think he's shown a lot of personal or self-reflection and understands that he's not like one of the top 10, tier quarterbacks. But he still believes that he can be a quarterback in this league. And I want to believe him. I didn't think he was terrible while he was in Tennessee. Now the stats and information tells me otherwise. But it's kind of similar to Jimmy Garoppolo or other quarterbacks of that same magnitude, where sometimes those guys just win, and sometimes it doesn't make sense how they do it, but they consistently do it game in and game out, or year in and year out. And I feel like Marcus Mariota was that guy. I mean, he won a playoff game against the Chiefs. Granted that was with Alex Smith, but he still won a playoff game. But I just don't like their collection of talent. I don't know if I personally trust Arthur Smith. So there's a lot of questions that I have there. But this year at least, I don't think they're a playoff team. They're missing their number one receiver in Calvin Ridley. They have a rookie receiver that's going to step in and be their number one. I don't see them doing well. What I do find interesting is the Saints can have two wildly different seasons, in my opinion. The Saints can either be a good team this year, or they can be a downright awful team. And it's really going to depend on Jameis. I don't think there's a middle ground. I think they're either a playoff team or they're a top 6 team drafting next year. I don't think there's a middle ground. With Jameis being even 85% of what he was last year, I think that the Saints can potentially be a playoff team and rival the Bucs for the division crown. I know the Bucs are the defending champions, and before that it had been the Saints, but I think the Bucs have the strongest case to repeat. They have the best quarterback in the division, as I stated at the beginning of the segment, or not the segment, but the show. And I think they have the best collection of talent in terms of, overall personnel, defensive, special teams, offensive skill weapons, offensive and defensive lines, whatever it may be. I think that they're slightly ahead of the Saints. And then I think there's a little bit of a break. Then there's the Panthers. And then there's another little bit of a break. And then there's the Falcons. And so what that means for me is that I think that the Bucs are going to win the division. I think the Bucs and Saints both finish with 10-7 records. But I think that the Bucs have a better in-division record. And so they're going to win the division based upon tiebreakers. Where this gets interesting is if Jameis is not 85% of what he was, if he doesn't come back healthy, if he gets injured again, if he's less than 85% or even 60% of what he was, I think they struggle. I think that they are then below the Panthers, who would move up from what I have them right now, which is 8 and 9. It would probably move the Panthers up to 9 and 8 in that conversation for the playoffs. Again, like we talked about with the AFC South, I'm not going to give you my playoff information until the very end, but 9 and 8, I believe, is in contention for a 7 seed. But without Jameis, if they're starting Taysom Hill, or they try to throw Trevor Siemian out there again, or they took the kid, Ian Book, I believe, is on their practice squad right now. If they try to throw somebody else out there other than Jameis, I don't see this going well for them. And I see them being at the very bottom of the conference and the division itself with the Falcons, who I have currently going 4-13. Taysom Hill is not a NFL quarterback, and the fact that he's their second string quarterback and gets paid the money that he gets paid is absolutely insane. But that just also is why I would believe that Jameis is the reason that they would go 10-7. So without Jameis, sorry Saints fans, you're going to have a really long season, but I also think you know that. Additionally, I don't know if Dennis Allen is going to be more like Sean Payton or if he's going to be like Dennis Allen when he was with the Raiders. Because that Dennis Allen was not good. No, he was not. But ultimately, like I said, it looks like we're going to have Bucs, Saints, Panthers, and then we're going to have the Falcons rounding out the AFC South. That is our NFL tune-up for the week. Next week, we're going to dive in, or not next week, but I guess Thursday or Friday, whichever day we're able to get the podcast out to you all. We are going to go start with the North teams. And so since we started with the AFC last week and then went to the NFC, we're kind of going to go snake draft on this. And we're going to go NFC North starting the second episode this week, and then next week we will go to the AFC North. As always, like, rate, review, subscribe, provide me any commentary that you'd like to have. You're all welcome to it. I'd love to hear from you. Please let me know if there's anything else you want to hear on the show as well. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk soon.